evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. It's actually our 60th episode, so another cool milestone that we're hitting here tonight. As always, I'm your host, Melanie Kirby, and with me here, I have my co-host, James Ellifritz. And James, who left the stove on? It's starting to heat up here just a tad bit this week after, obviously, no activity through the holidays.
Yeah, the stove was definitely on, and guess who was visiting quite a few different stoves? That would be Mr. Carlos Correa. So I know we'll get into him a little bit later. Finally settled on a kitchen to play for, but he's someone that what an interesting character. I mean,
it's just odd it happened to him of all people.
Yeah,
like he signed at the last minute last offseason after the lockout. He held out a little bit too long. Then he's got the issues with his ankle, which I'm hearing actually like maybe worse than a lot of people think. It kind of makes sense he went back to Minnesota just because, you know, their medical staff is used to him. They know what they're looking at. I think that's why this deal got announced a little bit quicker. But before we get into the Carlos Correa stuff, James, we talked about the AL Central on last week's episode, and things look a little different now this week than they did last week. It just shows how fluid things can be in the off season. But I just want to start out by sending prayers to Liam Hendriks and his family and friends. He announced he's stepping away to begin treatment for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He posted on his Instagram, quote, "Hearing the word cancer came as a shock to my wife and I, as it does to millions of families each year. However, I am resolved to embrace the fight and overcome this new challenge with the same determination I've used when facing other obstacles in my life." And James, I can't help, I know the situations are different, but I can't help to think back to Carlos Carrasco and when he was going through his treatments. And, you know, I remember when he finally did make it back, and I want to say it was in Tampa Bay. And he came trotting out of the bullpen. He got a standing ovation, obviously, from the fans and both teams. And, you know, we saw it last week with DeMar Hamlin, and it's just really showing the human side of these athletes. And it shows how horrible things like this can happen to them, too.
Yeah. That Carlos Carrasco situation with cancer. I mean, thankfully, he's been able to not only extend his life, extend his baseball career, to play for the Mets. We loved him for his time here. And yeah, it's unfortunate that any player has to lose time playing the game they love due to health reasons, especially something that can jeopardize your life. But from what I've read and what I heard, catch it early enough, that there's a strong chance for him to gain success out of this at the end.
Yeah, he's a fun baseball player, but he's an even better human being. He's spoke out against spoke out for LGBTQ and other very important causes such as that throughout the course of his career. He's obviously using his platform for good, and, you know, just wishing him a speedy recovery. We hope to see him back out on the field soon for our rivals in Chicago. But moving on to Minnesota. So, as you mentioned, the Correa saga, the drama reality show, is finally over. After agreeing in principle with the Giants, and, you know, that gets nixed the day of the press conference. Then you have Steve Cohen coming out, basically insulting the Giants for how they looked at the physical. And the Mets had the same exact concerns as the Giants. They back out of the deal after not being able to agree in the language of the contract with Carlos Correa. So what does Scott Boras do? Him and Carlos go and they shop around. And there waiting was Derek Falvey and the Minnesota Twins. They were ready to swoop in. They end up getting him on a 6-year, $200 million deal with probably 6 opt-outs, judging by the way Boras and Correa have done their contracts.
Right.
But James, I don't know. The Twins are going to be good, and we're going to get into it here, but that's a big move for their offense. I know we all know they need a little pitching, but Correa being the shortstop as opposed to Kyle Farmer, I mean, that's a massive January upgrade for them.
Right. And if we remember back to last season, when we started to pull away, is they had all their injuries. So
Yeah.
that was a key component to being able to separate and have those. What did we win? 3 out of 4 against them at home at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't sweep
Or
them, right?
4
I
out
think it
of
was
5.
3 out of was oh, that's right, because we
It
had
was a
that extra
5
game.
gamer.
That's right. And but yeah, that well, they have to stay healthy again. You know, history for those players between Correa, Buxton, and Polanco. It's usually not on their side to stay healthy. We were very fortunate last year with our health, I would say, for the most part, even for our guys that did play through injury with Jose and Andres. So we'll see. It's why it's a new season every year. Hit the reset button, and you never know. But I still feel confident about what we're going to be able to do this season.
Yeah, and I've always said I just felt like they were more of a concern than the White Sox. I do just think that the White Sox are going to need more than a season. New management. They lost their best hitter in Jose Abreu. I think they're entering a bit of a retooling period, which if they're going by the Guardians playbook, might not take them too long. But I just think as far as next year goes, I'm worried about the Minnesota Twins. It always seems to come down to us and the Twins, with the exception of 2021. But I posted a poll on the podcast page at Guardians OTCLE, and I asked everyone, who are you more concerned about this coming season, the Twins or the White Sox? And at the time of recording, there were 108 votes, and it is split right down the middle, 50-50. There was some very sound logic from people. And I'm going to pull that up. But it's just interesting that it was split right down the middle, 50-50. Like at JROM_GOAT said, just because the Twins get players back from injury, second place. The Sox starting pitching seems good, but I just can't see them being a good team overall, third place. Arthur Kinney, at Arthur on Sports, agrees with me. He said the Twins, that it's going to take more than an offseason to turn the Sox around. At Turtle Sound says that Twins have the younger roster and they're just a better run organization than the White Sox. He also brought up the run differential, where the Twins were +12 last year and the White Sox were -31. We're -31. That's insane.
Wow.
And then someone, Euphoria Like Sports, says, as soon as the Twins figure out who's going to pitch innings 1 through 8 effectively, I'll consider them. Sox have the much better pitching and untapped potential with guys like Robert and Jimenez. And Ohio State is #1, says White Sox are mad about 2022. I agree with Euphoria Like Sports. Obviously, James, we've talked about it before. The biggest concern with the Minnesota Twins has been their pitching. They acquired Tyler Mahle at the deadline last year. He got hurt, wasn't the same. Kenta Maeda was out. It was really just Joe Ryan running the show for them. Chris Archer was there, Dylan Bundy. They just had guys filling in, and they weren't very good. But that brings us to our next point. I think it was Monday. The Miami Marlins signed Johnny Cueto. And what does that have to do with us, you ask? Why are we talking about Marlins news on the Guardians of the CLE podcast? The Marlins have a surplus of young starting pitching. They have Tyler Rogers, one of the Rogers. They have Jesus Luzardo, Pablo Lopez. Obviously, Sandy Alcantara is leading that rotation. He's not on the block, but Perez is in there. He's getting Cabrera. They have tons of pitching that people are starting to call about. The free agent market's drying up, and we know the price of pitching is high. I think, and shout out to Chuck. Love you, Chuck. Super loyal fan of the show. And we had a great discussion earlier in response to Fran Mill's eyebrow post about why it's a bad thing if the Twins are rumored to be interested in Pablo Lopez. And that scares the shit out of me because of that. The one thing we have on them is pitching. And now that they're in on Lopez, they could fix that problem. They're even said to be dangling Luis Arai, which they know it's a problem if they're doing that. My thing is, you cannot let your division rival get better in a position you could use too while you hoard prospects. Take the chance to get good pitching. And why do I think Pablo Lopez is a good fit for this team? He's 26 years old. He has 3 years of team control left. He'll be a unrestricted free agent in 2025. He's in ARB too, so he's going to cost a little more per season than a guy like Jesus Luzardo would, who's pre-ARB still. But Lopez, his first 2 years in the majors were mediocre. He wasn't a highly touted prospect, so I think people sleep on him. They just look at box scores. They see he gets, his pitches hit the bat sometimes. He's not a high strikeout guy, but things really clicked for him in 2020, James, and he stopped forcing that curveball. And one thing about Guardian starters, Tristan, Savali, Plesac, they all have a really good curveball. Well, Pablo Lopez's wasn't working for him. So he ditched the curveball and he instead developed a cutter along with a just filthy, nasty changeup. I mean, if you search Pablo Lopez on YouTube, his 9 strikeout game against the Cardinals will come up. He struck out 5 righties, just doosh. The ball just dipped low and away on him, swung right over the top of it. He can locate it wherever he wants. And his comparisons by Fangraphs, Clayton Kershaw is the most similar from 20 to 22, seasons 20 to 22. Clayton Kershaw is the most similar to Pablo Lopez. Also, he's right behind Max Fried and Zach Wheeler, who was in the Cy Young, both were in the Cy Young conversation. And here's the thing. Nobody's asking him to be our ace. We have Shane Bieber, we have Tristan McKenzie. All we need him to be better than is Aaron Savali or Zach Plesac. That's not hard to do. And I think that's where people are getting it twisted. They're finding all the faults where they're missing all the good things that I'm going to get into in a second. But James, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think it would mean for this team to add a legit number 3 starter? We saw in the ALDS, Cal Quantrill was forced to start 2 games against the New York Yankees in the divisional round. And God bless Cal Quantrill. We all love him. But that man is a number 4 starter. He should not be starting 2 games in your divisional series for you. I think a number 3 is a difference maker for this team.
Yeah, number 3 is definitely a difference maker. But, in my mind, like perfect world scenario, it's somebody that's more of a veteran and it's also a left-handed starter. I think that's something that we need to fill the void of. But then my other option B that I'm thinking about, though, too, is thinking we talk about all the prospects that we have and the trade chips. How much are we going to overpay to get a Lopez that can put comparable numbers maybe to somebody that we already have? And it's not going to be Savali. It's not going to be, Plesac, if we could give him 5 runs a game, of course, if you give any starting pitcher 5 runs a game, it'd be fantastic. But if he had more run support, but we've talked a million times how we both feel about him. It's probably best to, hey, let's move along. But hey, Tito's got a long leash. You remember that clubhouse he had in the Red Sox and the cast of characters that they had there. And he's pretty liberal when it comes to guys being themselves. But with Plesac, it's sad that he hurts himself by injuring himself. But point being is, in my perfect mind, left-handed pitcher, veteran. And if we're going to give up some of those prospects, then it's the veteran thing what is going to get us past Houston or the Yankees in the ALCS. That's the thing. I'm looking so far ahead that yes, get through the season. We're going to throw starters out there that we most likely are not going to see at the end of the year. Do you think Plesac will be there or Savali? I think Cal will be there. Quantrill's going to be there, but the other 2 guys, I'm just not sure, because going back to option B, Mel, this is something inside me has me leaning this direction, and it's learning from history, but looking forward. In 97, when Jarrett Wright came up and somewhat came out of nowhere and got hot as a starting pitcher for our team, helped carry us to the 97 World Series, and we all know how close we were to that World Series championship. To me, there's somebody down in the minor leagues that's going to come up and do a Jarrett Wright this upcoming season. That's my prediction.
I agree. So my main thing is to get Pablo Lopez, you're probably including Gabriel Arias because they need someone who can play first base. And then you're probably including Will Brennan because they need a center fielder, and he's probably the best of the bunch that we have available. They don't need starting pitching, so you get to hold on to your big three. You get to hold on to George Valera. They have a bunch of shortstops too, so you get to hold on to Brian Rocchio and Angel Martinez. So you're pretty much holding on to most of your top 10 prospects right there, which is a difference which is big because it also allows you to make a move at the deadline. The other thing with Lopez, he's projected to be, and again, projections are just projections. He's projected to be a 10-win pitcher through 2025 with an ERA in the low threes each season and over 140 strikeouts and just around 30 walks each year, pitching in over 130 innings each year, which is big because he missed a big chunk of the second half last season with shoulder pain, which that's a bit of a concern. But again, Aaron Savali and Zach Plesac have injury concerns of their own that we know all too well. Yeah. So you're getting a little bit of an injury risk. I do agree with you. I would prefer to have a lefty in our rotation because the big three aren't lefties. Yeah, you know, we don't have a lefty currently in the rotation. All you really have is Connor Pilkington and then Logan T. Allen, who's going to start the year in AAA Columbus. He's a lefty. So you don't have much lefty starters right on the brink. And again, I do think there's still room for one of the big three to maybe make an impact, but we know how the Guardians are with roster manipulation, and none of them are on the 40-man roster. When you still have guys like Xavier Curry, Hunter Gaddis, Connor Pilkington, Peyton Battenfield, all starters on the 40-man roster who, you know, are probably going to start the year at AAA Columbus, who are going to be next in line for some starts when we know we're going to have a million doubleheaders from early in the season and the Elton John concert not draining the warning track. So you definitely want to have the depth and pitchers ready to step up. And, you know, externally, it's tough to find lefty pitchers, but if you look, we could have a rotation of Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie is your 2, Pablo Lopez is your 3, or Jesus Luzardo. Again, I'm not partial to either one. Both would be great. Cal is your 4, and Cody Morris is your 5th. You suddenly have raised the floor of your rotation drastically. I mean, Pablo, in addition to that cutter, the filthy changeup, I mean, Lopez's fastball sits 95 to 97 regularly. That's faster than anybody except Tristan McKenzie that's currently in our rotation. He throws harder than. He's got good stuff, and, you know, yeah, he has low strikeout numbers. Yeah, sometimes he doesn't miss a lot of bats. But when I think of pairing a guy like that who's already got 4 years big league experience, 5 years really, and then you pair him with the Guardians pitching development staff, my mind just goes crazy.
Yeah, that's good.
The possibilities because
the
stuff is there.
Yeah, that's true.
Promising.
Yeah, we find a ways to get the max out of players. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a very good point as far as maximizing his talent.
Right. And to make people feel better too, any prospects you end up trading, if you make a trade, any prospects that you trade for a guy like Pablo Lopez, Jesus Luzardo even, they can be recouped when you inevitably have to trade Shane Bieber, probably after next season, because it's unlikely that you're going to sign him to a contract extension. And to be brutally honest, with the pitching you have coming up and seemingly their unwillingness to trade any of the big three, do you even want to extend Shane Bieber? At this point, I'm throwing my money at Tristan McKenzie. He's younger. His stuff's better at this point. You know, he can be the ace of the staff one day. But, you know, with Pablo Lopez, I mentioned those 3 years team control through 2025. That gives you options with him too, because he could serve as the perfect bridge to the big three. If you do end up having to trade Shane Bieber, then he can slide up to 2, Tristan slides up to 1, and your big 3 can slowly start making their way into the rotation without too much pressure on them right away. And just obviously none of us know what things will look like after 2024, but you even have an option to trade Pablo Lopez again and recoup prospects there too. We know the Guardians front office is great at that roster manipulation, making sure they don't lose guys for nothing. So again, shout out to Chuck. I think that was a fantastic debate earlier today. Again, I know it's a dream. I know the reality is we're probably going to wait till the deadline. We're probably done as far as anything significant this offseason. It's a tad bit frustrating. There are still moves they can make, and I wish they would do a little more on the pitching side. I think our offense is fine for now. Just when I hear the Twins, get Correa, now they're in on starting pitchers, and it's like, damn, the offseason really isn't over yet. Teams are still gearing up prior to spring training, and that's what gets me a little nervous, because I think everybody's in the Central, at least, is going to win less games than they won last year. I don't expect the Guardians to win 92 games a year with the balanced schedule. You're playing all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I mean, you look at McKenzie and you take part of his slow start with his higher ERA. You take that out of the equation because he just has another offseason working with CC Sabathia. So that's another thing to think about, that he's going to come in and just even start better than last season. So I think we're going to drop some in some areas, but we're also going to gain it. So I think that 92 mark it's obtainable. I am concerned a little bit at slippage in the bullpen.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be Clase, but maybe some of our setup guys.
It's going to be really interesting to see how regression factors in to 2023 after what a magical 2022 they had. And in all reality, that's probably why they're going to wait till the deadline to make any significant moves, because they want to see what do we truly need? How much of this was for real last year? And I know we've mentioned that before, but that's definitely worth repeating.
Another thing, Mel, that I heard too that we didn't talk about as far as adjustment into the season is that the veteran players will be the ones that will have a bigger adjustment than the younger players coming up with the minors because of the clock. So between the pitch clock and then the throws to first base, I was watching MLB Network and they were talking about Anthony Rizzo saying how that he's got to make this adjustment, whereas younger guys will be able to come up and play normal because they're used to it. So
yeah, that's a good point.
There's so many. The whole league in general is going to have that adjustment period, and I just hope we get off to a hot start, because how many years do we not get off to a hot start? I can remember a season where I don't know if we had like damn near 20 wins maybe in the first month or second.
I like that we're starting on the West Coast.
Yes.
I do like that they're going to be out west in Goodyear. I like that they're getting one of their West Coast trips out of the way while they're already out west. The weather's warmer. Seattle's got a dome, a retractable roof. So I think that'll help too. They're not coming into play right away in a blizzard in Progressive Field. I mean, April 7th at Progressive Field still may be a blizzard, but we'll have to see how that weather goes.
Well, it's too bad that the Haslams, whenever they decide to finalize that deal with the city of Cleveland and build that new Brown Stadium with a roof, it just make it possible to play some baseball games in maybe April. We could kind of, can we borrow this stadium because you're not doing anything with it right now?
Yeah, as of now, no talk about a retractable roof, but there is a press conference on Thursday to announce the official renovation plan for Progressive Field 2023 and beyond. I know they're going to redo that Terrace Club area quite a bit, which it desperately needs. You walk in there, it looks like you're walking in a time machine. Yeah. So that'll be good to modernize that, get that a place where people can actually hang out and watch the game, because it's really aesthetically pleasing, I think.
Yeah.
And also Tristan, we just talked a lot about Tristan. Part of our off-season player update segment. this Saturday, Tristan will be hosting his 6th annual baseball clinic down in South Florida. And the camp is actually free to the first 150 kids who show up. So props to Tristan for being so generous with his time. I think that's really neat of him. And players are starting to show up in Goodyear, James. Sherry on Twitter has started sharing some photos and of Josh Naylor and a video of him, you know, taking BP, and just hearing that crack of the bat again after the awful Brown season. And it was medicine for me. It did things for me. I was so excited to hear that crack of the bat. But not just the Nailers, some other players are starting to make their way towards Goodyear. So Josh Naylor's already down there getting some work in after he has a normal offseason, finally coming off that injury. So not having to play first base as much and being able to kind of platoon with Josh Bell, I think, and no shift. I think we're going to see a big year out of Josh Naylor, that is.
Team Josh.
Yeah. And those who aren't heading to Goodyear right now, a lot of them are making their way to Cleveland for Guards Fest, which is next Saturday, the 21st. I will be there. I know you're hoping to get down there. Lots of players, Tito, Mustard, everybody's going to be down there at the Huntington.
Wait, Mustard's going to be there?
He is, yeah. And speaking of Guards Fest, you know who else is going to be there? Andres Jimenez is going to be there. Our 6th place MVP voting second base, Gold Glove winning second baseman. He's all healed up from that thumb injury that slowed him down towards the end of last year. And he announced on his Instagram that he's going to be designing some cleats with some lucky fans at Guards Fest. And the winning pair is going to be worn by him in spring training down in Goodyear. And the winner is also going to get a pair of custom cleats straight from the man himself. So that'll be super cool to see what cleats he ends up sporting down in Goodyear. Awesome. And then finally, while in Goodyear, Josh Naylor shared a photo on Instagram of him and Ahmed Rosario hugging on the field after one of the many walk-offs last season, saying, "Mi hermano." In other words, my brother. So, you know, James, it's not just us fans feeling the winter blues in January. You know, these players are itching to get back, you know, get in the clubhouse together, go out and play. You know, they were just as frustrated. You know, I'm sure they all felt like they could keep going in that playoff run last year. You know, they made it further than anybody thought, which I'm sure just makes them hungrier to get back out there this season and go even further.
Yeah, I would say that the culture and the chemistry of this team is something that we're very thankful for, and we all know that starts with Tito Francona.
Yeah, I think we got 35 days now till pitchers and catchers report to Goodyear on Valentine's Day. But before that, the World Baseball Classic will be getting underway. I know Lone Depot Park, home of the Marlins, is going to be one of the host sites. I think Chase Field in Phoenix is going to be one, and I think 2 in Japan. But James, you have some other news about somebody associated with the World Baseball Classic we can end with today.
Yeah, it's looking, Jeff Passan had on there that Nelson Cruz signed a 1-year, $1 million deal with the Padres, and he's going to get a lot of bats at DH, but he's also going to serve as the general manager Dominican Republic team for the World Baseball Classic.
Dominican team.
Which is pretty neat. That, you know, you get that opportunity to continue your playing career, but yet lead a hell of a group of baseball players for the Classic. So I find it fun when you see a guy that's 42 years old that can still play in the league and has that opportunity to sign with a National League team, to whereas before he wouldn't have got that opportunity because pitchers were hitting.
Yeah.
So you think about how many careers, you know, offensive players, their careers can be lengthened now to be able to DH. I want to watch that all day long over a pitcher batting, and it's such a positive move for baseball. More changes this season. To me, the momentum is on the side of Major League Baseball, and I'm really, this is one of the more excited times I've been going into a Major League season. And it's January.
Same.
Like in January, I'm just thinking, all right, who's playing in the NFL wildcard games this weekend? And I'm kind of paying attention, but it's more so, we keep just talking about, what these guys are doing in the off season. And I'm so thankful that we get all these reports and we get all of our followers continuing to pay attention to our podcast while we do this during the off season to bring you whatever content we possibly can bring you. And we just really appreciate all your support and continue to like and share our podcast. Let's continue to draw people to our pod and increase this audience because we have a lot of great things in store for this next season to spend with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. We hope we're helping everybody get through this off season because I feel the same way you have, James. It's crazy because we played even longer than most teams because we made it to the ALDS. But for some reason, the off season feels like it's been years already. Like
Yeah.
I'm just ready for it to be warm outside, to be grilling some burgers. You got the Guardians hat on.
I got my new hat, my new Guardians hat. So when you're watching on YouTube, you'll see my new lid. You'll see my new white hoodie. I'm ready to go.
Out.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
We are excited. We want to thank everybody for listening to our 60th episode of the Guardians of the CLE. Make sure you head over to believelandmediallc.com where you can find all our written content, all our podcasts for all the professional sports, college sports, and all the high school sports. We love bringing you guys content. Like, share, follow. We love and appreciate the support, and we will be back with you again next week. In the meantime, everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and go Guardians.
Take care, everybody.